Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. I'm sure most of you have heard by now that what was supposed to be the upcoming Jack Catterall versus Regis Prograis fight was postponed as a result of Jack suffering an injury in training. And as a result of that, the Dixon versus Harper fight that was supposed to be going down on the undercard, that's been postponed too, but moved to a different show, a different card. Now that fight is going to be going down on the undercard of Dalton Smith's next fight in September, next month. Late September on the 28th. It's just another look at that fight. So Terry Harper used to reign as a champion at 130 pounds, moved all the way up there to 154, managed to win the WBA title up there. But then she drew with a 40-some-odd-year-old Cecilia Brækhus. She drew with her. The fight turned out to be a lot more competitive than expected, and the feeling was that, well, she should dominate Cecilia because she's many years younger than Cecilia. And she didn't. She drops from 154 down to 147 to challenge Sandy Ryan for her WBO title, and she gets manhandled. She gets slaughtered in that fight. Now she's dropping down to 135. I don't like her chances in this fight, and that's saying a lot because I've been a long-time supporter of Terry Harper. I've been a fan of her for years, but the idea that you're going to look below average at 154, lose at 147, to then win a title at 135. There's no nice way for me to say that I don't like her chances. And so, Rhiannon Dixon is 1 or 2 years older than Terry Harper. She's actually 1 or 2 years older, but less experienced as a professional. Then why do you think she wins? Because of what I just told you. Terry looked bang average at 154, got throttled at 147, and now she's dropping down to 135, a weight I'm not even sure she can make match fit. She can probably get there, but can she get there and perform? Because she's going to be facing a very fast and athletic fighter, a herky-jerky fighter with a lot of speed, quick counters, head movement, upper body movement, good in the pocket, good mid-range to inside. Rhiannon Dixon's best punches are her bent arm punches, her hooks within close quarters, whereas Terry's best punches are her straight punches. At least in the past, she's had a bit of pop, a bit of power, though dropping down from 147 to 135, you have to question if the power will still be there, as getting down to that weight may sap her strength and her energy reserves. And her punch resistance. Don't forget that Terry Harper, she was knocked out at 130 by Alicia Baumgartner. Don't forget that the explanation afterwards was that Terry had been making that weight for far too long, 130 pounds, and it was perhaps too physically taxing, so much so that she can't hold a shot as good as she used to, so then they moved her up. But after moving her up, we know what happened. And now she is moving back down. It's understood that women fluctuate in weight more than the men do in the sport of boxing. They move up and down in weight more than the men do. Though given how Terry Harper has been looking, in tandem with how Rhiannon has been looking, that Rhiannon's been looking better and better, fight by fight, learning more, getting sharper, whereas Terry has been looking duller and duller, fight by fight. So on that predication, I do favor Rhiannon to win the fight. I favor Rhiannon to win a points decision and retain the WBO title. I think she can do that. It's nothing against Terry, but somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. Somebody has to go home empty-handed. And I think it's going to be Terry. I think that in moving down in weight, it's an act of desperation, and taking on a fight like this after a demoralizing loss to Sandy Ryan That's an act of desperation, too. They're trying to recapture the old flame.
Fire.
But throwing caution to the wind in doing so. Dixon may not come from some deep amateur background, but she's a natural. She's a skilled fighter and a quality operator. And this is less than ideal for what is supposed to be a rebound fight. They'll have a little bit more time to prepare now since the fight has been postponed, and that will give Terry Harper a little bit more time to get down to 135.
Dixon more time to study Terry Harper.
And I favor Rhiannon to win when the time comes.
She's going to keep her belt.
In men's junior middleweight news ahead of this weekend's title fight, Terrence Crawford said, "To be honest, this feels bigger than the Errol Spence fight. Errol Spence fight was big for the urban community. When you look around here, you see so many different races and cultures that it's bigger in its own right." But is he right? Is this fight a bigger fight than the Spence fight was? I think that,
in terms of the promotion, it may seem bigger.
Remember who was at the helm of promotion for the Errol Spence Jr. fight? It was really just the PBC, and they were the ones in charge with raising awareness for the show, getting it out there, getting people involved. That was really just up to them, whereas this show is being promoted by Matchroom,
with some involvement from the PBC, as some of their fighters are fighting on the show, some involvement from Top Rank.
At least one of their fighters is fighting on the show, backed by Saudi Arabia, backed by Riyadh Season, so it at least feels like it's catering to a bigger market or a bigger demographic because there are so many fingers in the pie.
It feels bigger.
I think this is a better card than the Spence versus Crawford card was. I can't even remember who fought on the undercard. Whereas this card, there are a lot of really great fights, very intriguing matchups, that from top to bottom, this looks to be a more entertaining show from beginning to end than that one was. That one, the whole focus was Spence and Crawford. Everybody else was just kind of in the background.
Forgettable.
But does that make this show bigger than that one? That can only be determined by how many people buy it, how many pay-per-views they manage to sell, and how many people pay to be there. That's what'll tell the story, which fight, which show was bigger than which other show.
This is still a numbers game.
And the truth of it will be in the numbers. I remember that Spence versus Crawford was reported to have brought in an estimated 700 to 800,000 pay-per-view buys.
An underwhelming number for a fight that took 5 years to build, 5 years to make.
But for as long as they took them, it should have done. At minimum, it should have done 1 million or over 1 million, and it came in just under 800,000 buys in this market. That's actually a solid number, a good number.
Though context is key. For a fight that took 5 years to make, people were expecting more.
Now this show, if this show doesn't match that number, then we'll know which show was the bigger show. Not necessarily the better show.
Because I told you, I can't even remember who fought on that undercard.
I literally can't, whereas this undercard has many more solid matchups that could be memorable than that one did. So to me, this show is already better in terms of quality and entertainment value than that show was.
To me, it's already better, but I don't know if it's bigger.
And even if it isn't, this show compared to that one, that fight, that main event, was built over a span of 5 years. You can't actually expect a Madrimov fight to have as much hype around it as a Spence fight, because we've been talking about a Spence fight for 5 years.
But hey, Crawford's the one who says that this fight feels bigger than that one because that one really only catered to one demo.
Distributed by the Showtime platform with the PBC at the helm of promotion. With a different decorum, things look a little different and they may even feel bigger. Saudi Arabian-backed show, promoted by Matchroom, involving the PBC and Top Rank.
I can see why he says this feels bigger. I see where he's coming from.
I understand it, and if he takes care of business, that opens a lot of doors for the future. Not exclusive to a Canelo Alvarez fight, which we've been talking a lot about week by week.
Not just that fight.
Saturday night, inshallah, changing my life because I'm waiting this night. I'm fighting for my country, for my family, and I want change my life, and then I want history. He want my belt, I want his greatness, you know, because I will be Saturday night, great fight, inshallah.
Israel said it himself. He wants Terence Crawford's greatness, and Terence wants his belt. Now, if Israel were to pull this off on Saturday, Terence Crawford would be ejected from the list per the rules that govern it. No fighter coming right off a loss is allowed to maintain a rank. The list is only for winners and only for champions. So if Israel were to beat Terence, he'd come in very low on the list.
Number 10 spot, in the most danger of falling off.
The only reason that he'd be there, because he beat Terence Crawford, who's ranked in the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, and per the rules that govern it, if you beat a pound-for-pound fighter, you may become one yourself. In that situation, Israel would get on the list, but he'd be in danger of falling off because all you really did was beat a naturally smaller fighter moving up in weight. To gain ground on the list, he'd have to do more than that.
A lot more.
That's if Israel were to win. If Israel loses and Terence takes his belt from him, Terence is currently ranked at number 4. Behind Canelo Alvarez, behind Naoya Inoue, and behind Oleksandr Usyk.
If he wins on Saturday, at minimum, he moves past Canelo. At minimum, he'll move up to number 3. Depending on how he wins, he may move up to number 2.
If he does it in good fashion, say that he goes in there and does to Israel Madrimov at a new weight. If he does to him what he did to Spence last year, or what he did to Jeff Horn years ago,
this would make Terence Crawford a 4-division champion like Canelo's a 4-division champion, like Inouye's a 4-division champion. He's catching up to them.
Why is Kazuto Ioka still there? Didn't he just lose to Puma?
He did. I haven't updated the list yet.
Because I've been waiting for this weekend's fight to update it, and once the smoke settles and the outcome is decided, all the outcomes will be reflected. Just know that Kazuto Ioka is no longer on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. I just have to make those alterations after this weekend's fight.
Don't worry, Puma's gonna be there.
He will get his just due, as will Terence Crawford if he becomes a champion at a 4th weight. More so, points for style if he does it in good fashion. Questions as to how Terence is going to look, because it's been over a year since he fought. It's been a year since the Spence fight. He's 36 going on 37, moving up to a new weight against a well-seasoned, well-schooled amateur and a world champion, an unbeaten one who's bigger and younger.
That's what's working against Terence. If his skills translate, the ones he's shown at 147, if he carries them up to 154 and he can stay in character, he's definitely gaining ground on the list.
And if nothing else, he's gonna move past Canelo. The Canelo fans ain't gonna like that, but there's a lot more intrigue to Terence's fight with Israel than there is for Canelo's fight with Edgar.
Canelo's fighting an unproven guy at 168. Terence is fighting an unbeaten world champion at 154. You do the math.
It's not a bad thing that these 3 fighters, Inoue, Canelo, Crawford, are often neck to neck with each other in the top 5. That means that these pound-for-pound fighters are fighting, and that's a good thing.
What's going to separate you from Canelo when you share the ring? Where do you see yourself in terms of that fight? How do you see your sort of keys to victory in there? Why do you beat him?
My IQ. You know, I feel like in boxing, right? You don't have to have the strongest punch. You don't have to have the fastest feet. But if you have the better IQ, like what Floyd did to him, that's exactly the same thing we're gonna do. You know what I'm saying? I feel like my IQ is gonna skyrocket. You know, I feel like for some reason, when we right there, every time like I jump in there with somebody that I know is like it's like a step up fight, my IQ like just shoots up more and more and more. You know, and I feel like at that level, man, my IQ is gonna like skyrocket. I feel like, you know, I got the power to slow him down for sure. I know that he's gonna respect me when I step in there with him. But it's the IQ, you know what I'm saying, to go in there and make him think. You know, when you go in there and make a fighter think, and not just going in there to just throw punches, and you actually make him think, it's gonna be tough, man. Like just like what Floyd did to him, you know what I'm saying? He made him think a lot, you know, and you know, I wouldn't say, you know, Bivol, you know, just threw a lot of punches. Bivol was bigger. He had great feet, but you know, I like to look at the Floyd fight. You know, I think that fight was something different because at the end of the day, I know I got a great IQ.
Ridiculous. For Edgar Berlanga here today to think that he can repeat Floyd Mayweather's performance against Canelo this upcoming September when he clearly isn't the fighter that Floyd Mayweather is, and these are very different circumstances. He is facing a very different Canelo Alvarez to the one that Floyd fought over a decade ago.
In 2013.
That was the first loss of Canelo Alvarez's professional boxing career, a loss that many of his detractors like to conveniently bring up whenever they want to take away from him, whenever they want to tear him down. But whether they want to acknowledge it or not, that was a much greener Canelo Alvarez than the one that's here today. That was a much greener fighter because he was only 23 years old.
It was 11 years ago. You don't think that 11 years later, all that experience that he amassed counts for something?
It's ridiculous. No, I don't think that Canelo was so green that you can't give Floyd Mayweather credit for beating him. You can definitely give Floyd credit for beating him. The disconnect is that Canelo is the same fighter here today that he was 11 years ago. No, he isn't.
He's better.
More experienced. And Edgar Berlanga said, Canelo can fight whoever he wants. He's a legend in the sport of boxing at this point. Just tune in for us, hashtag Berlanga Canelo, screw the haters, and everybody that's talking. Keep talking.
We will.
The token response whenever inconvenient truths are cited by the spectators in what is this spectator sport, oh, they must be haters. They'd have to be haters to think that Edgar Berlanga hasn't proven anything at 168 yet. They'd have to be haters.
They hate him.
Don't flatter yourself, sweetheart. There's nothing so important about you or your boxing career that anybody hates you. The fact of the matter is, you haven't beaten a former champion at 168 yet, let alone a current one. You haven't actually gone through the vetting process, the grooming process that prepares you to fight on a stage like this one.
That's not hate. That's reality.
Record amounts of copium, record amounts of cope are exhibited when all you can say is they're hating.
But are they lying?
Starts talking about how Floyd Mayweather beat Canelo a little over 11 years ago. Floyd was ranked in the pound for pound when he fought Canelo. Are you ranked in the pound for pound? Canelo himself, he was only 23 years old when he fought Floyd, who was in the pound for pound. He's 34 now.
What the hell makes you think that you can do to him what Floyd did to him?
I get that fighters have to believe in themselves when no one else does, and nobody ever did anything hard, anything that was hard to do, by telling themselves they couldn't do it, but that rationale only holds up until a point.
To a fault.
The matchmaking in Edgar Berlanga's career has been creative, to say the least. So many fights that didn't happen, necessary ones to prove that he's ready to compete at this level, didn't happen because if they would have, then he wouldn't have made it here.
What?
If he would have had to go through former champions like Caleb Plant or Jaime Munguia, Edgar perhaps doesn't make it to this point. If he had to come up against another unbeaten up-and-comer like himself in a Diego Pacheco or a William Skull.
A Christian Mabili.
You won the lottery is what you did, because you didn't really earn this title shot, and everybody knows you didn't earn this title shot. They're not haters, they're just being honest, and you're just deluded.
Angry everybody else won't play along.
Why should we? It's our money you're trying to get at by being fast-tracked to a fight that perhaps should have gone to someone else. Just go in there, get knocked out, get your check.
Buy a couple of more Yankee jerseys. Get a couple more haircuts.
Because this is ridiculous. The lies people tell themselves and tell others.
It's ridiculous.